Welcome back to the Nano Cruising Podcast. I'm Stefan Marceau, your host. In today's episode, we talk with John Welsford. He's a deeply experienced designer hailing from New Zealand. He is probably best known as the designer of the SCAMP microcruiser, which is a favorite among home builders around the world. So today we'll talk about his background, how he came into designing boats, some of his ideas about boating, some of his designs. There's a lot to cover today. Today I have the pleasure of having John Welsford come to the Nano Cruising Podcast. John is a small boat designer, probably one of the most successful. I guess we'll talk about the SCAMP later. It's probably, or the SCAP, probably the most successful plan design I've ever seen. John's boats are very classic, beautiful looking, and they're surprisingly fast. They go a lot faster than they look, so it's a testament to the design. So welcome, John. Thank you for joining us. Maybe let's start. What drew you to start designing small boats? Maybe tell me a little bit of your background and what made you want to go in that world.
Okay, well, my career job has been a sales engineer selling heavy sawmill equipment. So I sell it because it's one of those deals where 2 or 3 sales a year is good,
Okay.
big ticket items.
Right.
And my job was to sell it, install it, commission it, teach the operators, and troubleshoot.
Right.
So that was my career job.
Okay.
But early on, I'd been heavily involved in motor racing, mainly road racing motorcycles.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So, and I worked for Motorcycle Distributor at the time. And they came to me and said, look, we have a policy of no dangerous sports, no hazardous sports above a certain level of management. We'd like to promote you, and you've got a choice. You can stay where you are, and we're happy with that. But if you want to take the next step, we'd rather you weren't racing motorcycles. So I have quite a family background with boats and shipping. That in my direct ancestral line is William Denny and Brothers, who were one of the biggest shipyards on the Clyde in Scotland.
Right.
Right. So there's quite a lot of history there.
Oh, I see.
And
I see.
I worked for a very lax description of the word work as a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old. My granddad used to do the books for a solo boat builder who was functionally illiterate but could build very good boats. And in the holidays, I stayed with him and went and helped out around the place. And it wasn't long before it was pass that boy and hand me that boy and lift that boy. And I was tailing out machinery and just helping around the place. And that gave me a really good sort of view of what is possible to build boats. In my late 20s, early 30s, I had built a 20-foot long trailer yacht, cabin yacht, and was racing it with a reasonable degree of success and cruising it a lot.
Right.
I lived in Dunedin in the south of the South Island, and there are some really big alpine lakes up in there. Not big by your standards, but we're talking 20 kilometers or 30 kilometers long.
That's big. Yeah, definitely.
And but looking at the plans, it wasn't the right boat for the job.
Okay.
So, and I ventured that opinion. And he said to me, well, tell you what, you design me the boat that I should have, because he knew I was tinkering around drawing things.
Okay.
And I'll build it. And if it does what you say it'll do, you can have that Stanley 55 molding plane that you've been getting down off the shelf in my workshop and dribbling over. I've still got it.
Nice.
So that worked out. And then someone came along and said, oh, John, I really like Dick's boat, but could you do something a bit bigger or a bit smaller and so on? And it just gradually grew from there. And until about probably 15 years ago, it was a hobby that paid for itself and got me opportunities to get to know some really nice people.
Right.
And it grew. And then my day job petered out. I decided I wasn't going to do that anymore. That the 8 till 5 didn't enthrall me, and started working on it seriously. And now that here we are.
How many designs now? Yeah.
Somewhat over 100,
Yes.
but I think there are about 38 in my planned sales range.
Right.
But there are quite a few which were custom one-offs, which haven't gone into the range, like a big ocean-going power trimaran,
Wow.
2 mini Transat racers.
Wow.
Boy, they were learning experiences.
Wow. I didn't know about those. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's been quite a few oddballs. There's a Pacific Island trader that was built out of home milled timber on a Northland farm, used a Lister diesel that had been running a generator plant on that same farm.
Okay.
Yeah, so quite a few odd things, as well as the ones that I'm known for.
Right. Right. No, I would never have heard of those. I know all the classics that you've designed, but tell me your progress. How do you progress? How did you progress in your designs and a little bit the history of your designs, if you can, if you will.
Okay, well, the first thing to bear in mind is that my definition of performance is suitability for purpose, right? So
Right.
a racer has to be faster than all the other racers.
Mm-hmm.
A cruiser has to be more seaworthy, more comfortable, more fit for its use than all the others, and so on.
Right.
And when you extend that, it you get into all sorts of stuff. Like if a customer comes to me and says, I want a boat, and will you design it for me? So one of the first things I do is I say, where are you going to use it? How are you going to use it? And then we get into things like, well, how big are you? And Walkabout was designed for a gent, and I asked him for the width of his shoulders, how long he was lying down,
Wow.
what was a comfortable seat height, what was his weight, and all this sort of stuff. And it was designed around that, with all the other factors included, but it was designed to physically fit him.
Physically around him. Wow. Yes.
And he didn't, in fact, build it, but I know of at least 2 people who are very similar build to him, and he's quite a big guy, and they fit beautifully.
Mm.
And so comfort, in fact, even with the racers, comfort is a major factor, because people who are uncomfortable get tired.
Mm-hmm.
When you're tired, you make bad decisions, and
Mm-hmm.
bad decisions don't help safety. They don't help speed. They don't help any of your decisions at all. So
Right.
comfort is a very important factor in design.
That's true. I'd never thought of that. The racers, they look pretty bare usually inside, but yeah, I guess you're right. The comfort of sleeping is probably very, very huge on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, comfort's not necessarily just a matter of how thick the padding on the seat is.
Mm-hmm.
Comfort is a matter of how high the seat is, where the footrests are to stop yourself sliding off the seat, the angle of the backrest, how far away the controls, such as the tiller, that you have to reach, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Ergonomics is the word for it.
Yes, that's a lot of details to take into consideration. Then
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I frequently mock up part of the accommodation.
Before the
Right.
boat, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, if I'm designing a boat and I need to fit things together, I'll go out to the workshop and I'll get some cheap panel and I'll mock it up.
Oh, I see. Right, right. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes total sense. Yeah. So you're not using 3D CADs. You're life CADs really. So that's great.
Yeah, well, I mock it up and go and sit on it,
Yes.
or reach or whatever.
Yes.
And you get boats like Scamp, and we're going to address Scamp shortly, I
Absolutely.
guess, where the boat feels when you're in it much, much bigger than it actually is.
Yes.
And that's around the ergonomics, how it works.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, well, let's talk about the Scamp. That's become really a cult classic, really. And I know some of the history behind it, but not everybody does. But maybe tell us about how that came about to be commissioned. And I'd assume that you would have been even surprised about how successful it is and was and
Mm.
still is. It's an amazing boat. So tell us about the story behind Scap.
Okay, well, I had designed several boats with that particular bow and underwater shape, um, and they were working really well. And I was exploring to see where the limits of very wide beam for the length of the boat would be,
Mm-hmm.
um, and boats like Sherpa and Tender Behind both work really well. And Tender Behind is half as wide as it is long, and Sherpa's not far off it.
Hmm.
So when Josh Colvin came to me and said, "Hey, I want a cruiser," we had several exchanges of emails. What's your intention and use? Where's it going to be used? And so on. I knew Josh anyway, so I knew that he was a very similar build to myself, maybe a little bit lighter, um, and how it was all going to work. So I drew it up to his original 10 feet.
Right.
And I said, "That's not going to work. It's too short. It's too short." And no, we want 10 feet. Well, this is really pushing it. But he was persuaded, and it was scaled up to 11 foot 11. And that's where it is, and that's where it works. Now, interesting thing, you take a Scamp out and you park it where there's people walking through. And within a couple of minutes, the woman will be around it, stroking it. And it seems to very much appeal. And I think it's because it's not threatening. It's small and it's cute and it's stable and it's capable and it's comfortable, and they sail a lot better than you'd think.
That's right. That's right.
So when you've got all of those together, and then you have a look at where the demographic is that is taking them up, you've got people who are at retirement age or past that. They have limited storage in which to keep a boat. Their garages are single car garages because they're living in townhouses or apartments or whatever,
Correct.
or housing developments where there's not a lot of space. So the small boat fits. They've got a boat which doesn't take a lot of maintenance. They've got a boat which will carry mum, dad, or granddad, grandma, and two grandchildren quite comfortably.
That's amazing.
So it all works. So it not only fits their uses, it fits their circumstances, and it fits their perceptions. They look at this little boat and they say, "Wow, I get it." A lot of people look at the photographs and they look at the drawings and they don't get it until they're standing alongside it and they put a hand on it and look inside and look around, and then they get it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Until you see it, you feel it. Yeah, it's a genius design. It works. If you give me a piece of paper and say 11 feet 10, make a boat, that will do. There's nobody that could come up with that. So that's total genius. Absolutely. So yeah.
But there are some interesting things around it. For example, the cuddy.
Yes.
And you can sit inside the cuddy,
Yeah.
and it gives shelter. And it gives shelter. If you've got two small children, you can tuck them up in there, or you can sit up in there when at anchor and it's blowing a bit, and you can run your cookers to heat up some food or coffee or whatever. But the forward half of it, the intention of that is to have some very high up buoyancy. Right. So if you flip a scamp over, it's possible to do it. It's very hard to capsize them, but it's possible to do it. The boat floats with its gunnels clear midships above the water.
Yes.
And that makes it very, very easy to rotate it to get it back on its feet. Yes. Right. So you pull the board out or grab it, put your toes on the gunnel straight, and just lean back, and around it comes very easily. When it's on its side, it's just one hand on the board, give it a pull, and up it comes.
Right.
So, and that leads into, and when it comes up, there is so little water on board because of the distribution of the buoyancy, the side buoyancy in particular, means that you can sail it away without bailing it.
That's amazing. And of course, our Rice pushed the limits of this boat.
Yeah. So that's and Scamp has taken me places that I never imagined I'd go. I mean, I've been to the Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival 4 times, I think, and it's Scamp. Scamp Central, world capital of Scampism. Went to the Port Ludlow Smallcraft Festival last year, and there were 11 scamps there.
Nice.
And number 800, I think they're over 800 now, but I noted on the forum that a guy was about to start building sail number 800.
Wow. That I don't think this exists in any small boat. This numbers of actually being built. It's incredible. And I think we can talk about the other design. The long you made a long version of it now. I guess it's similar. It's got the cuddy. Is that the Pathfinder? Is that the one?
The cuddy is the only thing that's similar. Okay. That's long steps.
Long steps. Sorry, that's right.
So, yeah.
Yes.
And we have walkabout and we have tread lightly. Well, this was going to be 7 league boots, but that's a bit long and a bit of a mouthful. So this is long steps.
Long step. That's
long
right.
steps is a sailing rowing boat, an adventure boat, long-range coastal capable adventure boat. I haven't managed to capsize mine yet, in spite of trying pretty hard. But the idea there was that the cuddy would afford shelter. The cockpit layout is very similar, so that I can lie down in the middle of it with my head and shoulders up in the shelter. And I use a bivvy type tunnel tent.
Okay.
Right, with a sleeping pad and a sleeping bag inside it.
Yes.
And I've slept through a number of showers, and I stay nice and warm and dry because, as I say, my head and shoulders are up in the cuddy. But again, the real aim was to provide high up buoyancy in the forward section of the boat, and the shear line is a little higher at the stern than would be normal, and the whole stern area, apart from the tiller tunnel, is boxed off as an air tank, so that should the boat be rolled on its side, it's got high up buoyancy at both ends, which will much reduce the chance of it going any further than flat on its side. It's got similar buoyancy distribution in the side seats and the cockpit floor as Scamp does. And I have filled it up with water. And there's a gentleman in Vancouver Island area who got knocked flat. He was sailing in an inlet with big hills on both sides, and he didn't uncleat the main sheet in time. The boat got knocked over, and to quote him, he thought that the whole Pacific Ocean was coming in over the side. but the boat rounded up slightly, popped up, and just carried on sailing, and all of the water drained into the well at the after end under the tiller.
Wow.
Didn't have to bail it. So my intention was to design a boat that would be capable of doing a circumnavigation of New Zealand's North Island.
Wow.
And that would involve 3 or 4 days at sea
Mm-hmm.
on a couple of longer legs.
Mm-hmm.
Whether I do it or not, it's a different story, but I'm looking to do some quite long voyages in it.
Yes. So it's capable of that. It's designed for that. And obviously you've designed it for the water to drain out that way too. Wow.
Yeah. So I was out in a 4.7 last week.
Wow.
And I can tell you that it got my attention. I was concentrating pretty hard, but the boat handled well. We were running off. I'd rolled the mizzen up, and you can do that from the cockpit. I'd reefed the main, and I wished I'd rigged the second reef. I was actually considering dropping the sail altogether and just running off under bare poles. It was blowing that hard.
Wow.
But the boat, as long as I was careful to aim the boat at the low spots in the waves that I was overtaking, it was handling really well. And the 1 or 2 that I missed, it just slowed down a bit. Yeah, so I'm pleased so far. It's really quick upwind.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the, I guess, what about other design of yours that are lesser known but maybe deserve more attention? Is there other ones you wish were more popular for a reason or another? You pour your sweat and soul into one and say, oh, it didn't go well, but it's a good boat.
Well, Saturday Night Special.
Okay.
And there's a little story about that. I was approached by a couple of people here in New Zealand saying that they wanted to participate in the Texas 200.
Right.
Well, you're not going to take a boat from here to there. That's 9,000 miles. So I worked up, just for fun, a proposal where they would build the frames, the rudder assembly, the center case, and a couple of other bits, and put them into a mountain bike air transport bag.
Oh, wow.
And take paper patterns. And the idea was that 3 couples would arrive on the Texas foreshore, and because all the motels there are up on legs, so they've got at least some shade to work in, and they can run a power lead there. And cheap plywood, bamboo spars, plastic sails from the guy who does polytarp sails, a fittings kit from Duckworks, and I figured you could build one if you had 6 people and all that preliminary work done. You could build 3 of them in a week.
Wow.
1 coat of paint, and you sail them in the event. And at the end of it, you give them away or whatever you like. You could have a bonfire on the beach or whatever, and come home again with a big smile. And it turned out, now the boats are designed for the Texas 200, right? So they're just a smidgen under the registration requirement length.
Mm-hmm.
They are designed to run really fast, and they have an oddball rudder assembly which works in very shallow water at speed, and they're big and stable, and they tend, if you get hit with a gust, they tend to go over till the rail's down and just sit there. They don't want to go any further. They're quite hard to tip over.
Wow.
So that didn't happen, but there've been, I think, 8 or 9 of them built.
Okay.
All of the owners walk around with a sneaky grin on their faces because they're a lot quicker than most people would expect a lug sail rigged hard chine dinghy to be.
Yes.
They work really well. And they work so well that I actually redrew the plans so that they would produce a boat with a bit longer life than a wobbly stitch and tape one.
Yeah, I never heard of that design. I think I've looked at all your design. I've never came across this one. That's pretty cool.
Well, have a look on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of videos there from Philip McCowan.
Okay.
And there's one where he's running at about 12 to 14 knots, and it's just smoking along. And he's sitting in the back of the boat, sitting on a beanbag with his arm draped over the tiller, and it's just bombing along. Really good. So, and the plans include a suggestion that you get a swimming pool beanbag and put a lanyard on it and use that for your seating.
that works. That can work. Sure.
It works. Very comfortable.
What about for a starter, somebody that's never built something? Where can somebody start? What's an easy design? I guess the Scap. Everybody would go to Scap.
Well, Scamp's actually, there's quite a lot of work in a Scamp. It's a big boat. It's just not very long.
True.
And there's quite a lot of structure.
True.
So the thing to do if they're going to start and build a boat, bear in mind that more than half of my boats have been built by people who've never built before. And the way it works is the bigger and more complex the boat, all of the jobs are simple. Every job in the boat is simple, but there are more of them in the bigger boats.
Mm-hmm.
So look at the circumstances and how soon do you want the boat?
Right.
So you could build something like Truent, which is small and simple, easy to build.
Yes.
It's got the right amount of built-in buoyancy. It's simple to set up and rig. It would be a relatively cheap boat to build because there's not a lot of fittings involved. Right. And fittings, they really burn up your wallet. Even if you buy them from Duckworks and they're cheaper than anybody else, there's still a fair investment involved. So Truent would be a good start, and it's big enough for 2 adults or an adult with 2 children. It will fit on a garden trailer rather than having to get a specialised boat trailer. A reasonably strong person can pick the bow up, put it on the back of a trailer, get round the back and just push and shove it on. So that would fit a lot of people's circumstances. And it's one that doesn't get a lot of attention. It doesn't have the classic look, but it's a boat that performs well. It does its job.
Tell us about, I guess, balancing. What are the design elements you need to balance in your boat? You got performance, weight, and
safety is right at the top sharp point of that.
Right, that's correct. That's true.
So the boat has to be safe.
Yes.
And safety, comfort comes into safety, like I mentioned before. To be such that it doesn't wear the people out so that they make bad decisions. It has to handle well. It has to be fast enough to perform its expected functions. It has to carry enough weight to perform its expected functions. For example, when I designed Sundowner, the anticipated first voyage was from New Zealand to the Falkland Islands. So there needed to be about 800 kilograms of disposable stores. Now, you can only carry a certain proportion of the boat's total displacement in variable load being the water that you drink, the food that you eat, the toilet paper that you use, the toothpaste that you use, everything. Right? So you start off with it full at the beginning and you end up at the end of the voyage with all that gone. You can only afford a certain proportion of the boat's total weight in variable load. So that has to be calculated in from the really very beginning.
Right.
Yeah. And if I were to write down all of the considerations when I start drawing a boat, there'd be pages and pages and pages.
This completes parts 1 of our interview with John Welsford. There's a lot more to cover in our next episode. I want to thank our listeners for listening and sharing these podcasts with everybody. I also received some fan mail, which I appreciate. On whatever podcast player you're using, there's probably a button that says fan mail. So basically you can click on it and send me a text message. I can't reply back directly to it, but I received them. So I received one from California lately. He's pretty happy. He's got a Drascom longboat for 30 years. He's pretty happy to having found this. He's a big fan of Roger Barnes, of course. I appreciate any touch points like this. For example, you can also join the Facebook group, Nano Cruising, where we can discuss new speakers, boats interests, and so on. So thank you again for joining us. And as usual, seize your own adventure.